The grand glittered like a palace pieced together from pure daydreams and cold hard cash. A colossal crystal chandelier dangled beneath the domed ceiling, a galaxy in mid-plunge. Every faceted drop refracted color until the air itself looked painted. That light slid across each perfectly groomed guest, brushing their faces with mystery and borrowed royalty. Along the walls, gold filigree twisted like runes from some vanished epic, shouting wealth without ever raising its voice. Mirror-smooth marble underfoot threw every sparkle back again, so the whole chamber doubled in size. Sophie, the smallest fish in the Lyman pond, wore a white evening gown so cleanly cut it could have stepped straight off a moonbeam. The silk skimmed her skin, so fine it shone only when she moved, the way moonlight skates across still water. It clung to every curve, nipping in at a waist that looked as if it might break under a whisper, then flared just enough to keep the rhythm of her walk. Willow stems in a night breeze. Against that white her complexion turned almost translucent, more alabaster than flesh, as though some craftsman had carved her from chilled cream and set her glowing. Her eyes were a clear tide pool, deep enough to hide whole constellations. Each sweep of her lashes cast shadows like tiny closed fans. A neat, proud nose gave her face its architecture, and the faint rose of her mouth looked freshly opened from a spring branch. The set of that mouth, though, tilted just a fraction, said she and Destiny were still arguing. Tonight Vance had her by the elbow, towing her toward Adrian like a man delivering a final installment. Every step felt like walking in wet cement. Her gaze skittered, lost fawn in two bright headlights. Adrian stood a head above the tallest suit in the room, shoulders squared as if loaded with invisible epaulets. His midnight black jacket had been hand-stitched for him alone. The fabric carried a shadowy grain that drank the light. Beneath it, the hard slope of muscle announced that the corporation on his business card was only the second most powerful thing in the room. A blood-dark tie, knotted with surgical precision, flickered like embers at his throat. His eyes were winter lakes, flat, depthless, uninterested in surface ripples. When those eyes reached Sophie they paused, registered, dismissed, all in the space of a heartbeat, then glazed over again. Vance beamed, voice syrup thick, performing the introduction. Adrian dipped his chin a single degree, acknowledgement enough for a king. Sophie understood the ledger behind the courtesy. Two empires listing badly. The only lifeboat a strategic marriage. No roses. No knee. No whispered promises. In front of champagne flutes and hungry smiles they took their vows. Roses banked the altar like snowdrifts. Lilies stabbed through for contrast. Scent so heavy it almost carried weight. Sophie felt none of it. So this is how the story ends, she thought, before it ever begins. Adrian's ring slid on cool as steel. The priest pronounced them allied, and cameras flashed like lightning without thunder. The Adrian's lakefront estate rose at the end of a private drive, all white stone and Roman pillars. A castle somebody had airlifted in from another century. At noon the walls flared so bright she had to squint. At dusk they cooled to pearl, framed by lawns clipped to military attention. Inside, the hush was so complete Sophie could hear her own pulse. Leather sofas the color of bitter chocolate crouched on silk rugs. Crystal tables throwing prisms that slid across oil paintings older than some nations. Every object screamed money. None of them spoke her name. Adrian left before the sun finished climbing, knotting his tie in a blade of light that sliced through bedroom drapes. No. Goodbye. No see you later, just the soft click of a door that cost more than her first car. Sometimes he never came back at all, working through the night at Caldwell headquarters. The estate left to sigh under its own weight. When he did return, only the weak hallway bulb marked the event, throwing his shadow across acreage of polished floor like a trespasser. Sophie still rode the commuter bus to the glass tower that housed Caldwell, filing herself into a cubicle with every other dreamer on probation. She drafted sketches, amended blueprints, answered to supervisors who had no idea she signed her father's last name on trust fund papers she never touched. When the whistle blew she rode the same bus home, let herself into white marble silence, kicked off heels that suddenly weighed 10 pounds each, and wondered how a place so expensive could feel so clearance rack empty. One evening they met in the arched hallway, the house holding its breath around them. Sophie steadied herself against the wall. "You've been really swamped lately?" The question came out paper thin. Adrian flicked a glance at her, already halfway to his study. "Caldwell doesn't sleep," he answered, voice flat as the slate floor. His stride didn't break. The door clicked, and Sophie was alone again, the echo of his footsteps ticking like a clock that only counted losses. Later that season Caldwell threw its annual gala, same grand, new theme. From the curb the building looked dipped in starlight, glass skin reflecting every headlamp and neon wink. Inside, the chandelier galaxy had been lowered a few feet so guests could walk through the sparkle. Paintings, borrowed from museums under insurance thick enough to buy small countries, lined the walls. A jazz quartet wedged itself between champagne pyramids, and the air smelled of jasmine, roasted duck, and calculated flirtation. Sophie hadn't planned on showing up, but after enough coaxing from her coworkers she finally caved. She wore a powder blue sundress the color of a summer sky, clean, cloudless. The hem floated with every step like a blossom caught in a breeze, weightless and lovely. The fabric clung softly, skimming her frame and framing all that restless 20-something energy. Her hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, a few mischievous strands brushing her cheeks. Makeup was barely there, a wash of pink shadow to brighten her eyes, mascara turning her lashes into twin doll-sized fans, the faintest flush on her apples that made them look freshly picked, and a pink tint on her lips that turned the pout adorable. Inside the ballroom the team kept refilling her glass. Sophie had no head for liquor. 3 drinks in and she was out cold. Panic set in. Someone scrolled through her phone, found Adrian's number, hit call. Adrian was in his Caldwell office, reclined in the black leather throne that passed for a chair. The decor was stripped to the essentials, obsidian desk, glowing monitor, unread contracts glowing back. Behind him, books and binders stood at attention like cadets. Beyond the plate glass, nighttime Riverdale glittered, headlights streaming down the avenues in strands of liquid gold. He frowned. Yeah. A coworker blurted, Adrian, Sophie's wasted. Can you come get her? A beat of silence. On my way, he said, voice flat, but a flicker of worry cracked the ice. He strode into the grand minutes later and found her draped over a velvet sofa. Her cheeks blazed sunset red, the color bleeding right to the shells of her ears. Drunk gorgeous. Locks of hair clung to her forehead and throat, messy, irresistible. Her gaze floated somewhere far away, lashes fluttering as if she were dreaming. Adrian crouched. Sophie, wake up, low, gentle, nothing like boardroom tone. She pried her eyes open, saw him, and smiled sloppy drunk. You came for me. Something tugged in his chest. He scooped her up. She weighed next to nothing, kitten limp, and carried her out to the car, leather and cedar wrapping them both. Halfway home she murmured in the dark, I know you don't like me. Still, I never asked for any of this. Her lashes were starred with tears that caught the passing streetlights like dew. He stared, jaw tight. Fool woman, he muttered, equal parts ache and annoyance. Back at Adrian's lakefront estate he laid her on the duvet and drew the quilt to her chin. She grabbed his hand, refusing to let go, slurring grievances between hiccup sobs. They swear I'm only here because of connections, but I try so hard. Lips trembling, cheeks striped wet. He lowered himself onto the mattress, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest. That petal pink pout still shaped like a pouty kiss. The fortress he called a heart registered its first hairline crack. A protective urge he'd never invited sprouted roots. He stroked her hair until her breathing evened out, eyes gentler than any boardroom had ever seen. After that night he started keeping tabs without meaning to. He told his PA to make sure Sophie never caught grief inside Caldwell. Morning sun flooded the open plan office, dust motes dancing in gold shafts. Sophie sat hunched over blueprints, gaze as sharp as a stylus tip, frown, smile, erase, redraw. Adrian watched from the glass corridor, unblinking, pretending to read a report. Her slim fingers fluttered across vellum as if she were conducting silent music. Today she'd twisted her hair into a careless knot, a few glinting wisps brushing the collar of a crisp white blouse cinched with a baby blue ribbon. The black pencil skirt skimmed every curve. Heels snapped against tile when she crossed the floor. One afternoon the curve of her brows knitted so tight they almost touched. She tapped her pencil, stumped by a load-bearing detail. A colleague poked her head over the divider. Sophie, someone here to see you. She stepped out and found Adrian leaning against a column. Custom suit immaculate. Heard you hit a wall, he said, a smile ghosting across his face. I've got it. Really? She answered, cheeks warming. I know you do, he said, but let me save you an hour. He walked her back to her desk, tall enough to block the gossip radar. Decision after decision rolled off his tongue, clean, surgical, brilliant. Sophie tried to focus on the drafting, but her pulse skipped. He's nothing like the headlines, she thought, stealing glances, color blooming in her cheeks. Another week. Her manager, still sore over a lost promotion, piled impossible deadlines on her and dressed her down in front of the bullpen. The air soured. Keyboards went quiet. Sophie stared at her sneakers, tears threatening mutiny. Word reached Adrian in under 5 minutes. He arrived. Storm clouds bottled in a suit. Every footfall on vinyl sounded like a judge's gavel. Phone stopped ringing. He stopped in front of the manager. Explain yourself. The words fell like steel slabs. I I was just assigning workloads. Mister, you're done. Clear out by lunch. And you're escorted. The dismissal sliced clean. Adrian turned to Sophie, voice softening a notch. No one here will pull that stunt again. Tears shimmered, turning her irises into misted jewels. Thank you. He brushed a droplet away with his thumb. Skin meeting skin like a spring breeze. Silly girl. None needed. Spending real time with her revealed layers the tabloids never printed. Her kindness. The grit she wore under pastel blouses. The way she guarded her sketchbook like a prayer book. He caught himself hunting for her in corridors, replaying her laugh at 2 a.m. Anticipation sprouting faster than he could prune it. He began tweaking his calendar, closing multi-million-dollar deals early just to make a 7 p.m. reservation. The first time he asked her to dinner, the room looked like something out of a travel magazine. Warm sconces throwing honey over brick. Oil paintings murmuring stories. Roses shedding perfume onto white linen. A baby grand in the corner released soft notes that dripped like caramel. She walked in, eyes wide, and he felt something loosen in his chest he hadn't realized was wired shut. Adrian arrived at the restaurant early. He wore a charcoal gray sport coat over a white shirt. The collar unbuttoned just enough to trade Caldwell's usual frost for something looser. The fabric draped like liquid wool, skimming the hard lines of his frame. He chose the window table. City lights glittering below, and waited, eyes on the door, a flicker of anticipation warming his face. The moment Sophie stepped in, he rose. She had on a blush pink dress edged with lace so fine it could have been stitched by fairies. The color bloomed against her skin like peach blossoms in April, turning her into something that belonged in a petals. Her hair was pinned up, the graceful column of her neck exposed, loose wisps teasing her cheeks. Adrian moved to her side, pulled out her chair, never breaking eye contact. You look beautiful tonight. She ducked her head, cheeks heating. Thank you. Once seated, he lifted the leather-bound menu. What are you in the mood for? The ribeyes prime, perfect char, juices sealed, house béarnaise, or there's handmade tagliatelle, tomatoes slow-cooked until they melt into silk, fresh parm shaved tableside. His voice was dark velvet. Every syllable landed in her stomach like skipped stones. Sophie blinked, smiling. Ribeye it is. While they waited, talk drifted easily. Adrian told her about the morning his assistant filed a contract inside the man's own lunchbox. Sophie laughed, bright as wind chimes. He must have wanted to die. He turned the color of printer paper, Adrian said. Softer now, but those screw-ups paint the day, don't they? When the steak arrived, he sliced it for her without thinking, knife gliding like a dancer. She tasted, eyes widening. Honestly amazing. He watched her pleasure, the corner of his mouth hooking up. Worth it. Then, later, in the hush of the multiplex, they shared a love seat. Scenes flashed cobalt and gold across their faces. Halfway through, Adrian laced his fingers through hers, warm, steady. She startled, turned. He smiled, slow and starlit. She answered with her own quiet curve of lips, and neither let go. Palms growing damp, neither willing to break the tether. They slipped away to Seabrook at dawn. First light poured molten gold over the sand. Waves unfurling white hems stitched with foam. Salt wind whipped his rolled white sleeves, tugged her butter yellow sundress into ribbons behind her. Adrian stopped, drew her close. Sophie, these days with you, sunlight packed into minutes. I've never banked that kind of light. Her eyes glistened, galaxies reflected in brown irises. Same. You make me feel safe enough to breathe. Crimson flooded her cheeks as he lifted her hand, brushed a kiss across her knuckles, the tender scrape of lips sending her pulse rabbit fast. They walked until the tide licked their ankles. Sophie bent, lifted a cowrie glowing opal in the sun. Look, rainbow in a shell. Adrian tucked a windblown strand of hair behind her ear. Matches the girl who found it. She pressed the shell into his palm. Keep it. He slipped it into his pocket like contraband treasure. Always. Later they built a sandcastle. She packing damp towers. He ferrying shells and sea glass flags. We need turrets, she declared, eyes sparkling. Your wish. Architect, he laughed. Both of them sandy to the wrists. Giddy as kids. The afternoon smelled of salt and sunscreen and something sweeter neither could name, possibility. Maybe. They never saw the storm that had already started forming on the horizon. Out in the gritty margin of the city, competitors who hated Adrian's Midas touch rented a shabby back office. Walls scabbed with flaking paint. Corridors stinking of old takeout. There they bought a mole inside Caldwell and slid a forged set of blueprints into Sophie's active folder. Timing the drop for the quarterly design review, the trap sprang on a Tuesday. Caldwell's open-plan studio buzzed into sudden, venomous quiet. Eyes swiveled toward her monitor where the stolen concepts glowed. Whisper sharpened to hiss. She lifted the entire facade from the sole finalist. Someone muttered. Another. So the princess has sticky fingers. Sophie felt each word like a needle. She wanted to scream I sketch until 3 a.m. How could I steal my own insomnia? Instead, she stood, parchment pale, knuckles whitening around the mouse. Colleagues edged away as if plagiarism were contagious. On the glass wall, reporters already pressed smartphone lenses. Hungry. In the director's office, fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. The evidence is on the server, he snapped. Not looking up. You're on leave, effective now. I didn't, her voice cracked. Tears fell anyway, splattering the carpet like hot rain. Check the timestamps. Check, HR will handle it. The dismissal landed like a slammed gate. By evening the scandal owned every front page. Gold-digging designer plundered rival. Online commenters sharpened pitchforks. Fraud. Hack. Cancel her. She read until the letters blurred, then threw her phone and watched it shatter. A cheap replica of how she felt inside. Adrian burst through her apartment door before midnight. Coat flying. She stood in wrinkled work clothes. Eyes swollen. Cheeks salt-streaked. He folded her into the circle of his arms. Chin on her hair. Listen to me, Sophie. I'm going to torch this lie until nothing but ash remains. She sobbed against his chest. Fists curled in his shirt. They won't believe me. They'll believe proof. His voice dropped to steel. And I'm very good at finding proof. Back at Caldwell, he kept the lights burning. Staff filed in under grim eyes. Legal. Forensic IT. Brand security. Phones rang. Keyboards clacked. Espresso pods stacked like ammunition. Adrian moved through data trails. Cross-checking IP logs. Badge swipes. CCTV. Whenever fatigue nipped, he pictured Sophie's shattered expression. And rage flared fresh. Sometime before sunrise he found it. A timestamped security clip showing a junior draftsman, name unfamiliar, accessing Sophie's secure drive at 2:14 a.m. using a finance key badge. He leaned back. Predator calm. Got you. As they dug deeper, Adrian told Sophie, I believe you. Don't let the rumors get to you. Take care of yourself. He looked at her, his eyes glowing with trust, a beam of light cutting through the darkness that had swallowed her world. Sophie met his steady gaze and felt a sliver of comfort. Okay, I believe you too. Hope flickered awake in her eyes again. The pressure was still crushing, but she knew Adrian would stand beside her. She began to reset her mind, refusing to let the poison reach her. She spent her days reading at Adrian's lakefront estate, sketching simple blueprints, waiting for the truth to surface. At last, they caught a thread and followed it until the whole tapestry of sabotage unraveled. Caldwell had bribed a night shift janitor to slip the forged plagiarism file into Sophie's computer while she was away from her desk. Forensics gave them time-stamped edits and an IP trail. Every pixel of data pointed back to Caldwell's boardroom. Adrian booked the Grand's largest auditorium for a press conference. The stage was draped in matte black velvet, the Caldwell logo looming like a judge's gavel behind him. Klieg lights bleached the platform noon bright. Below, a shark tank of reporters buzzed, lenses clicking like automatic weapons. Adrian strode out in a charcoal Brioni suit, confidence pouring off him like heat shimmer. He lifted the evidence folder high, then laid each sheet on the lectern as if dealing sentencing cards. His voice rolled to the back rows, slow, deliberate, every syllable a hammer blow. This was a calculated smear. My wife, Sophie, is innocent. Caldwell will answer for this, in court and in the market. He let the silence soak in, swept the room with a stare that warned every journalist not to misquote him. A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Even the bulbs paused. Sophie stood at his side in immaculately tailored ivory, tears shining like rhinestones she refused to let fall. Thank you, Adrian. Without you, I'd be ash. He laced his fingers through hers. Warm, unbreakable. We're married. I'll never let anyone hurt you. The storm had made their bond steel. Whatever came next, they would front it together. When the headlines finally cooled, life at the estate settled into a hush that felt almost powdered with sugar. Adrian turned ordinary mornings into events. Sophie woke to find the bedroom floating in blush pink balloons, each one inked with a private love note. Sunlight knifed through the curtains and set the latex aglow like rose gold lanterns. On the nightstand, 24 red roses drooped with dew, perfume thick enough to taste. She clapped both hands over her mouth, laughter bubbling out. Adrian appeared with a breakfast tray, dimples flashing. Morning, beautiful. She flew into his arms. How do you even think of this stuff? He kissed her forehead. Because your smile is my daily KPI. On slow afternoons, they colonized the garden. Peonies, dahlias, and lipstick red poppies rioted around them. Butterflies zigzagged like day-drunk tourists. Adrian poured jasmine pearl tea from a white porcelain pot, steam curling between them. Try this, a new supplier. Tastes like April. Sophie sipped, eyes eyes closing, floral, slightly sweet, perfect. They traded paperbacks, arguing over plot twists the way other couples argue over directions. She walked away from the deal. Would you have? I'd have burned the contract and bought the company, Adrian said, grinning. Their laughter startled a sparrow into the sky. Evenings were for old movies and shared blanket forts in the media room. Adrian lined up cheddar popcorn, sea salt chips, and Sophie's guilty pleasure chocolates like concession stand soldiers. She cried at the predictable reunion scene. He dabbed her tears with a corner of the fleece throw. It's only a movie, sweetheart, she sniffled. Shut up. It's real in here, she said, tapping her heart. When slapstick hit, they both howled until the crystal chandeliers rattled. They attempted Taco Tuesday together and ended up with deconstructed burrito bowls. Adrian wore an apron that read boss of the sauce. Sophie supervised with a ladle like a traffic cop. You're mincing, not dicing, slow down. Gordon Ramsay. He stole a kiss over the cutting board. Dinner tasted of too much salt and burnt peppers, but they cleaned their plates. Drunk on the simple miracle of making something together. One bright morning Sophie locked herself in the master bath, heart jackhammering. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines as bold as a contract signature. She walked out holding the stick like a fragile trophy. I'm pregnant. Adrian's briefcase hit the marble with a gunshot clang. He lifted her, spinning until her toes brushed the ceiling. Yeah. You're serious? He knelt, pressing his ear to her still flat belly. Hey, rookie, hurry up and draft your first business plan. From that second, Adrian became a one-man prenatal SWAT team. He color-coded meal plans, grilled salmon at 6:30 a.m., peeled every shrimp before plating it. At each prenatal checkup he grilled the OB like a hostile witness until the doctor laughed. Your wife and baby are textbook perfect. 10 months later, because their baby liked to hit snooze, Sophie delivered a rose-lipped, dark-haired daughter at 3:07 a.m. The first cry sliced through the exhaustion and stitched them into a brand new trio. Adrian cut the cord with shaking hands, then bent to Sophie's ear. Thank you for giving me a universe in 8 pounds. Later, in the nursery back home, he rocked the tiny bundle under constellations he'd painted on the ceiling, each star labeled with a hope. Sophie watched from the doorway, love filling her chest until she felt it might crack her ribs. The tabloids eventually found fresher meat, but Adrian and Sophie stayed the headline in each other's lives. She launched a capsule collection that sold out in 12 minutes. Analysts called it Riverdale's most lucrative maternity leave. Adrian closed a deal that doubled Caldwell's market cap and donated the first $100 million to neonatal research. At night they still folded laundry together, warm onesies dotted with tiny yellow ducks between silk Armani shirts. They had built something no scandal could dismantle, an empire of 2, now 3, grounded in trust and glittering with everyday wonders that no amount of money could buy.